Last video, we began the mammoth task of finishing the Siege of Gondor megaboard. We got the front half complete and the city streets are well on their way, but before we finish this megaboard, we have some unfinished business to attend to. Over Christmas, I launched a massive Rohan arc, including building this monster Helm's Deep and playing a mega battle on it.
Reach the walls! Getting up on the wall!
And Games Workshop asked me to build my favorite location in all of Middle-earth. GW sent me an absolute mountain of plastic crack to build the city of Edoras, and we made a ripper start assembling a huge horde of Rohan buildings. Now my Edoras layout is going to be huge, and today we are going to fully finish the very first section, the upper city and the inner courts of Edoras. Since you guys have seen this board last, I have been busy. All the cliff work and of course all the scenics is now done. So before we dive into our last big phase of detailing this piece with plastic crack, let's jump back in time to past Loki. So this is where we last left the city of Edoras. The bones are here, but over the next few minutes, this brown lump of foam is about to transform into arguably the best bit of scenics that I have ever done. Up first, we need to complete our cliff work. The Edoras set was built on Mount Sunday, here in the South Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and its peak is a rocky escarpment that Brago the Builder chose for the seat of his kingdom. So we need to continue the rock work we have around this eastern side, behind Meduseld, to join onto the cliffs on the western face, so that our royal courts are fully encircled. These cliffs don't have to continue all the way down the foam to the very base. I can make some of that foam disappear with a coat of black paint, kind of acting as a nice border, but I want enough cliffs to really sell the effect of that rocky encircled hilltop. I started on the eastern side and worked along the sides, adding a huge variety of rock faces, keeping it just as varied as possible. The almost vertical foam surfaces are a little bit tricky, so wooden skewers pinned the casts in place while the liquid nails dried. Happy with the cast coverage, it is then blending time with a boatload of modeling compound. I smush this in between all our casts, just like all my other rock molds, to transform these disparate casts into a cohesive rock face. But in this build, they also have the important role of blending several rock molds into established structures in the city, like the Meduseld Foundation. I do talk about rock molds a lot, but I really love them. Sorry if you've seen this like 100 times, but we are doing a lot of cliffs lately. But crikey, it's just so simple and so damn realistic. Look at those sexy cliff faces. Just epic stuff. Then it's painting time, so of course it's leopard spotting time. This is a technique of layering washes, so I grabbed some old brushes and thinned down brown paint and flicked and dabbed a mottled patchwork of earthy tones, making sure that I didn't completely cover the white plaster, because then we have a final all-over pass of black wash. This tones and blends our mottled browns, but it also creates some grey toning on our bare plaster and creates a super realistic finish in basically zero time. It is such a speedy technique, it genuinely just feels like cheat mode. With all the cliffs done, we can finally begin the scenics, and up first we need what I call the foundation layer, which is actually the same recipe that I used for the Helm's Deep Valley floor. First, I smashed down some PVA glue all over the entire board. I thinned it a little bit with water just to help it spread, and then through a sieve, I sprinkled down a mix of grout and sand. This goes essentially everywhere, regardless of the type of scenics that are going on top, and I even let a bunch kind of like fall and spill onto the rock molds, which really helps those rocks blend into our scenic layers. From the mix, I also sprinkled a bunch of small stones and kind of larger gravel right up to the edges of those cliffs to accent the kind of rocky details with a realistic buildup of loose scree. Then, that is all sealed with a mix of isopropyl alcohol and watered down PVA. The iso goes down first, and then the alcohol molecules break up the surface tension of the PVA glue as it lands on the scenics, allowing it to penetrate all of those substrates and connect to that base glue layer, making a super strong foundation for us to keep building our scenics into. So that is a hell of a lot of static grass, foam flocks, tufts, and soils and aggregates. Now we've got to work out the exact kind of colors and combination of ingredients to get the right sort of Rohan hillside sloping up Edoras. First up is all of the paths that wind their way in and around Edoras. I started with a sand soil blend, sprinkling it gently, kind of closely following my reference photos of the location to try and get this as screen accurate as possible. There are several larger thoroughfares kind of from the gate up to the stairs that lead up to Edoras, and then beyond to where we will have our watchtower that we need to build later today, and then a bunch of smaller winding paths. Honestly, there's really only one road. It's like a great river with its springs at every doorstep and every path as its tributary. I then built some accents into our road mix with a lighter sand to try and create that kind of baked, hardened earth look from the many feet and horse hooves pounding it flat. Then I carefully picked some small flat stones from my driveway and laid them down from the drain culvert built into the Meduseld stairs, all the way down to our little water fountain in the center, and blended that into our road mix with some more grout. Then it's finally time for the layer that we're all here for. The grasses. This is going to be a monster task, and looking back from the future, this is easily the best grass that I have ever done, so pay close attention. Our first few layers need to provide the basis of our coverage, establish our general color profile of the grassy slopes, and start to build a little bit of texture to represent the smallest foliages, the mosses and the clovers that sit beneath our big swishy Rohan grasses. I started with some yellow-green fine foam flock and sprinkled it fairly liberally across the entire hillside, working right up to our pathways and feathering it into the sands. Then I grabbed some darker green flock, slightly coarser but still relatively fine, and focused that around our rocky cliff sides. My theory here is that the water would catch and pool around the rocky crags, so there'd be a little more moisture, which means more chlorophyll production and thus greener grass. I also used this color kind of sporadically across our main blend of yellow-green, just to add some accents and natural variation, as well as a few little clumps to begin our clover textures. Far out, I'm just in love with how good this looks. We've managed to get a really great kind of color profile for the foundation of the grass. It's actually a little bit more yellow here in person than it looks on camera for some reason. And that kind of last layer of foam flocks, there's enough contrast starting to show between our roads and our grasses. This is the right direction for us. Our next layer is going to be, we've got to seal all this down, which is going to make it look really wet and change the colors, but it will come back to this once it dries. And then we start to build our mid layers and our big tall layers with static grass, starting with tufts. I rummaged through all of my various static grass tufts and chose a few yellowy, greeny 4mm and 6mm, and I've decided before I kind of go nuts on this whole board, I'm actually going to use this little slope in front of our Games Workshop plastic crack palisade walls to be our test area for the full grass treatment. So I added a bunch of tufts kind of sporadically up against the palisades, around the cliffy rockwork, and a few clumps to add detail to those flat plain areas. Then I loaded up my static grass applicator with our smallest coverage, some 2mm dead grass, and applied this pretty evenly to our entire test area, spraying down PVA before working into the slope. We need that wet layer to help conduct the charge of the applicator, which helps the fibers stay tall and upright as they land on the board. Then I did a pass of 4mm winter grass, which is kind of like a yellowy brown, applying sporadically around the hill face to try and add some accent length and break up that golf green look of the uniform base layer. Happy with those fibers so far, I then returned with a coarse yellow-green flock to add some more texture and break up the uniformity even further. This definitely isn't 100% finished, but I'm loving where this is going, so it's time to jump onto the rest of the board and level it all up to this point. I started just behind the walls around the horse corral and the lower houses and began by building up our tuft coverage, and then continued all the way up behind the royal stables, across the hillside right to the back of Meduseld, and then back down the other side to meet at the gatehouse. By adding the tufts in these little kind of accent clumps along the cliffs, building edges, and other features, I've created some really nice points of interest. Then it's time for our 2mm dead, and I built this up again with a pretty even coverage, making sure to blend it nicely up against our pathing and gently blowing any overspill clear with my airbrush. And it's crazy how much this elevates the board just with this simple layer. This is the thing about scenics. Every time you put down a new layer, it just gets better. The more kind of different layers and the varied materials that you can add, the more realistic your board will get. But at the moment, the color of our top layer is clearly way too uniform, so in come our accent grasses, the 4mm yellowy brown. This gives us variation in both length and color, which is great, and by sporadically applying it across the whole board, we break up that color and can also create some strong realism by putting our longer grasses in regions that are less traveled by the citizens of the upper court, so close to the cliffs and away from the paths. Then our next accent layer is of course our yellow-green coarse flock. This little extra bit of texture really drives away the golf green look and also helps build that kind of smaller shrub and kind of sense of clover foliage. So with our main hill sign leveled to the front test section, I had a look, and I decided that I just want more variation, more detail. So I grabbed my very first flock from our foundation layer, that fine yellowy green, and applied that in a sporadic blending pass to bring back more of that yellow parched vibe. But then to push that even further, I applied the same style of coverage with some coarse brown flock, and that gave us some much needed contrast. Then in the corral, I used some of that brown flock to kind of give us a bit of a churned up mud look from all those horse hooves. And then we just need to add some classic black paint to the trim of all of the foam edging at the base of the board. So that is all of the scenics down, and this is what they will look like once it is dry. But right now what we need to do is soak the whole board in sealant, which will make it look super weird, and then about a week later it will return to this, but it will be solid and beautiful for gameplay. So one last mega soaking in ISO and PVA. The ISO here is even more important because of all the fibers and the textures of the scenics. The PVA literally just sits on top and it dries in kind of strange globule patterns on top of the scenics, and once that dries, it's basically irreversible. So even after the PVA went down, I actually went around again with the ISO and kind of reapplied anywhere I needed to pop the glue surface tension, and then we have an absolutely stunning scenic landscape. I am like so mega proud of this, and you guys have kind of seen the board at this stage teased a little bit in recent videos, but this board isn't technically finished and there are some mega important final details to add. And these are not scenic details, these are plastic crack details. There are some absolutely massive things about to drop in the next couple of weeks, huge content arcs, but to kind of get ready for that, it means I haven't been uploading as frequently, and because of that, sponsors have just evaporated, and the whole reason that we are surviving through this real quiet period is these incredible people behind me. A massive thank you to all of my patrons. If you like everything that I do here at Zorpazorp, all of this mental scenery projects of a massive scale, go and check out the Patreon, link down below. You could get yourself a statue dedicated in your honor, or a plaque, or get on the banners, get yourself on the Patreon on a wall. It is seriously what keeps this channel going. This video, I've got 3 awesome new Megazorptrons getting added to the wall. Zachy Powell has got an Uruk-hai Berserker in a stone finish. Andy Tucker has got a Gandalf the White on Shadowfax in a gorgeous white stone finish, and Evie Callahan has her amazing Legolas model that she painted up for the Helm's Deep Battle Reports, and now she belongs on the wall as well. Massive thank you to you guys and all of my other Megazorptrons, and just a monstrous thank you to everyone on Patreon. You guys just keep the lights on, keep this whole channel running, and keep the Zorpazorp dream alive. Now, over the last 3 episodes of the Edoras Sprue Mountain series, I've spent a bunch of time, with the help of a few mates, clipping huge amounts of Rohan scenery goodies off the GW sprues and sorting them into a set of tubs of components. And from there, we constructed a huge amount of Rohan structures, nearly 20 buildings, from small Rohan houses to mead halls, and even the beginnings of our fortified palisade outer ring wall. Up here on the Royal Court, we've already built the inner palisade ring wall and a destructible gate from the GW plastic crack. But we have one last important structure to kit bash and a huge host of detail work to add the final finishing plastic crack touches to this centerpiece of the Edoras layout. Our first massive missing detail is of course the Muster of Rohan bell tower. Right beside Meduseld, this 3-tiered tower is spanned by ladders and an upper battlement encasing the bell to call the Edoras eyot to muster.
Muster the Rohirrim.
The lower level is fully encased in palisade, so I grabbed some of our Games Workshop walls and cut them down to size to get the right size panels, and then razor sword off the spikes. For the 3 platforms, I've got 3 3D printed crossbeam frames that were modelled in Blender and some dowel rod which will form the main pillars of the tower. I cut the dowel down to size and then using my hobby knife carved and whittled away the kind of smooth texture to really rough up the uniformity of the dowel, sanding and smoothing those cuts to just get a nice kind of scale wood feel, and then it was time to start lining up our pieces so far.
Alright, mate.
For fuck's sake, man! I am so busy trying to work on Edoras. You can't just be teleporting in here.
You're saying make a smaller version of what you're making, exactly the same.
No.
Smaller Edoras, you know, dream the same dream.
How did you get that from what I just said? You know what? Fine, whatever. As long as you don't come in here.
Can I have this?
No, stop. Put that back. Ooh. Put that down.
Fine. Put it back there. Look, I know what you're trying to do, Sensei Zorpazorp. You want an apprentice. Look, I'll go away, yeah, I'll come back for feedback.
No, don't come back. No.
Don't sweat it, man. I'm going to be back.
Please leave.
You are so funny.
Right, now that's over, let's get back to work. So I started to try and line up the dowel poles and realized that first I actually need to make the platform flooring. So I grabbed a bunch of the Games Workshop palisade walkways, and with a bunch of razor sawing and snipping with my clippers, I had 3 platforms ready for assembly. I grabbed my Dremel and tapered down the top of the dowel poles to better fit the pilot holes in the top platform, and then began assembly by gluing the top, smallest platform onto those poles with super glue. Now this entire process I just fell back in love with super glue activator. These glues are from Deluxe Materials, and this whole awesome glue range you can pick up from Gap Games, my affiliate link down in the description, and the activator hardens the cyanoacrylate super glue instantly, making it extra strong, and it just makes assembling this kind of 3-tiered wobble monster insanely easy. I soon had all 3 platforms and my lower palisade glued in place, and next we need our final plastic details, starting with the upper battlement. This was made from the watchtower battlements, which I cut down with the razor saw and glued in place on all 3 sides of the bell tower. Activator again helped to lock that all in place because it was kind of balancing pretty damn precariously. Then I grabbed some acrylic filler and went across the entire model, filling the many gaps between all our different materials, and then worked back into the filler with a damp brush to sculpt and seal that all nicely before adding our final detail, 3 extra long length ladders from the Games Workshop Watchtower kit. After letting the filler dry overnight, I gave the whole piece a prime, first with dark grey and then a light grey zenithal, before diving into painting. Now, our classic Rohan Edoras scheme here. First up, a blast through the airbrush with our wood tone mixed up from Liquitex inks, and then a little overbrush with a bone. Then I picked out the gold details with our Sharpies and gave the entire piece an all-over wash with homemade Agrax Earthshade. Once dry, I cut it into the board just to kind of make sure that it was level on that slope, and then added some extra grass tufts and flocks to blend it into the board, really make the tower feel like it's part of the landscape, and there is our finished bell tower. This is the last structure that we need to make, but there is a bunch of kind of life and fine details still to do, which are going to take this board to the next level. I grabbed a bunch of my plastic detail gribblies and knocked up some barrels, assembling the 2 halves to make some singles and stacking some together before diving into 3 smaller structures: a thatched roof storage hut, a raised chicken coop, and a small wooden gazebo. First up is the storage hut. Now, I'd already made this little roof when we were kit bashing some houses, so for this I simply added some wooden supports by combining some extra house kit beams and some horse details. Second is our raised chicken coop, which needed a small door drilled into some roof gabling, and then I completed the roof with more thatch and rafters. Then I cut down 4 palisade pillars to make the support beams to get it high up off the ground, and added a ladder to access the coop. Finally, I made the gazebo with 2 floor panels from the watchtower kit as the roof, and a series of cross beams and supports using bits from the palisade and house kits. I also cut up a bunch of my palisade wooden log offcuts from the various kit bashes and assembled these little wood and lumber piles to match the kind of firewood and some discarded construction materials that we can see was on the film set. Then I painted up these final details and began to add them to the city. Just simple PVA and straight down into the board, and then a sprinkle of scenics and the odd grass tuft to really blend them into the landscape, make them feel lived in, especially on those lumber piles, giving us a little bit of moss kind of growing up on the sides of the wood. And there we have the top Edoras board, the inner courts, the royal city, fully finished. This is just the beginning of Edoras, the first third of the full board, but for the time being, this mega Rohan centerpiece is finished. I love the Helm's Deep megaboard, but there is something so special about Edoras. It might be my new favorite.
So what do you guys think? Helm's Deep or Edoras? Which is your favorite?
All right, mate. Yeah, I've done it.
Done what?
You make an Edoras, I'll make an Edoras. We'll be friends. We're friends. We're definitely friends.
Well, it's a bit small, mate. We kind of do stupidly massive around here.
Oh yeah. Well, yours is.
Oh, come on, dude. Don't cry. Of course you're worthy.
Really? Yeah? Yeah, I knew it. Yeah, you do want me to be your apprentice. I'll move in next week.
Move in where?
No worries, dude. God, it's such a relief.
What? No.
Oh man, please make sure you guys go and check out Hayden's amazing 10mm Edoras build over on his channel, The Wizard's Brush. The build is amazing, his edit is possibly the most hilarious thing I've seen on YouTube in years, and honestly, he's so talented, and he has like 5,000 subscribers or something ridiculous. So come on, Zorptron Army, get over there and support an awesome Middle-earth crafter. I promise you, if you just watch like 20 odd minutes of me making this Edoras monstrosity, you will love his channel. His link is down in the description. A massive shout out to Ed, Gareth, Matthew McCormick, Matthew B, Ryan Johnson, the latest Patreons to score themselves a plaque on the Patreon honor wall. If you would like your name up on the Zorpazorp Patreon honor wall, you can get a plaque, a statue, get on a banner, then go and check out Patreon, link down below, to help keep Zorpazorp alive. And I will see you guys very soon indeed in the next one.